Thoughts have been running the show long before permission was ever given. Not the obvious ones, but the quiet repetitions that decide focus, energy, and direction before action begins. Life does not move according to potential. It moves according to what the mind rehearses when no one is watching. Control has been mistaken for motivation. Motivation fades. Control remains. Everything built without control eventually collapses under pressure, distraction, or emotional fatigue. Feeling stuck is not a mystery. It is the predictable outcome of unmanaged thinking, looping without interruption. Confidence disappears when thoughts argue instead of decide. Energy drains when the mind negotiates instead of commands. Discipline weakens when attention is hijacked by doubt, noise, and internal resistance. Thoughts are not harmless. They are instructions repeated until behavior obeys automatically. Whatever dominates the inner dialogue shapes posture, timing, patience, and response. Response shapes reputation. Reputation shapes opportunity. Being tired does not remove responsibility for thinking clearly. Being discouraged does not excuse mental drift. Being overwhelmed does not justify surrendering control to habit and impulse. Those states are conditions, not authorities. Most lives are not limited by talent or opportunity. They are limited by untrained attention and undisciplined thinking. Attention scattered produces action delayed. Action delayed produces regret disguised as reflection. Thought control is not positivity. It is precision. It is the ability to interrupt patterns before they become identity. It is choosing direction even when emotion pulls elsewhere. It is deciding what receives energy and what gets denied access. The mind does not need comfort. It needs leadership. Leadership applied internally changes everything externally without effort or announcement. Without leadership, thoughts wander. When thoughts wander, life follows. Every result already present was preceded by a tolerated thought. Every unwanted pattern survived because it was rehearsed instead of challenged. Nothing changes until control replaces awareness. This is not about becoming calm. It is about becoming exact. Exact with attention. Exact with interpretation. Exact with response. If distraction has been winning lately, control has been optional. If momentum has stalled, thoughts have been allowed to argue too long. If progress feels inconsistent, command has been replaced with hope. What follows is not motivation. It is conditioning. Conditioning that trains the mind to obey direction regardless of emotion, fatigue, or doubt. If you are the person this book is talking to, then let's begin the transformation journey. Chapter 1. Your thoughts are not neutral. Your thoughts are not harmless, and they are not passive. They shape how you interpret effort, resistance, and difficulty. Every decision you make passes through thought first. When you tell yourself something feels hard, your body responds accordingly. When you think something can wait, urgency dissolves immediately. When you assume you are not ready, action stalls without protest. These thoughts feel natural because they are familiar. Familiarity does not make them accurate or useful. Most people never question the tone or direction of their internal dialogue. They assume thinking happens automatically and must be accepted. That assumption quietly hands over control of behavior. You do not hesitate because you are incapable. You hesitate because a thought suggested delay, and you obeyed it. You slow down because a thought labeled effort as excessive. You quit early because a thought framed discomfort as unnecessary. None of those thoughts forced you to comply. You complied because you never practiced refusal. Your mind has learned that it can suggest escape without consequence. Each time you follow, it strengthens the habit. Each time you resist, it weakens its authority. You cannot change your life while allowing undisciplined thinking. Action without thought control collapses under pressure. Consistency requires mental governance, not emotional momentum. Most people wait for their thoughts to improve before acting differently. That order never works. Thoughts change when behavior stops validating weakness. You must learn to observe thoughts without accepting their instructions. A thought saying you are tired does not mean you stop. A thought saying you are overwhelmed does not mean you retreat. A thought saying you deserve rest does not mean progress pauses. Thoughts offer commentary, not commands, unless you allow it. Right now, your thoughts speak freely because they have never been challenged. They have learned that explanation is enough to stop effort. They have learned that discomfort triggers negotiation instead of execution. This is not a personality flaw. It is a training issue. Your mind has been trained to prioritize comfort over control. That training can be reversed with deliberate pressure. You do not argue with every thought. You decide which thoughts are allowed to influence behavior. A disciplined mind does not silence thoughts. It filters them. You will hear resistance, fatigue, and doubt. You will not let them decide. Control begins the moment you stop asking how you feel before acting. Control strengthens when you act despite internal objection. Your life will change only when your thoughts stop running ahead of your standards. Until then, effort will always feel optional. You do not need to think differently to start. You need to act while thinking resists. That is how authority is established internally. That is how thoughts learn their place. Chapter 2. Interrupt the inner voice. Your inner voice speaks constantly because it has never been disciplined. It comments on effort, evaluates discomfort, and predicts failure without restraint. Most of the time, you accept its output automatically. That acceptance is the problem. The inner voice does not exist to improve your life. It exists to conserve energy and avoid perceived risk. When effort increases, it speaks louder. When discomfort appears, it becomes persuasive. You confuse this voice with intuition. Intuition is quiet, precise, and brief. This voice is repetitive, emotional, and self-protective. It says, "You can do this later." It says, "Today is not the right day." It says, "You need more clarity before committing effort." These statements feel reasonable because they are framed calmly. Reasonable language does not equal useful direction. You do not need to silence this voice. You need to interrupt it. Interruption is an act of authority. It signals that thoughts are not allowed to finish unchecked. When you interrupt a thought, you deny it momentum. Most people let thoughts complete their arguments. By the time the thought finishes, behavior has already shifted. Energy drops, posture changes, and delay begins. You must cut thoughts off early. When a thought begins explaining why effort should pause, you interrupt. You do not debate. You do not negotiate. You do not analyze intent. You stop the thought and move your body immediately. Movement disrupts mental loops. Action breaks internal speeches. The mind cannot dominate when the body is already engaged. Your mistake has been waiting for the inner voice to cooperate. It will not. Its job is to resist strain, not endorse growth. Every time you interrupt an actor, you retrain authority. The mind learns that it is no longer in control of timing. At first, the voice will intensify. It will repeat itself with urgency and emotional weight. This is not failure. It is extinction resistance. The mind pushes hardest when its influence is threatened. If you retreat during this phase, the voice strengthens permanently. If you persist, it weakens rapidly. You are not fighting thoughts with better thoughts. You are overriding them with behavior. Thought control is not thinking differently. Thought control is refusing to let thoughts dictate motion. You decide when action begins. Not energy, not mood, not confidence. The inner voice learns through consequence, not reasoning. When its objections no longer stop action, it adapts. Over time, the voice shortens. Its arguments lose detail. Its urgency fades. This is not because you feel better. It is because authority has shifted. You are teaching your mind that it speaks, but you decide. That single shift changes everything. Chapter 3. Stop negotiating with fatigue. Fatigue is real, but negotiation with fatigue is optional. You have confused awareness of tiredness with obedience to it. Feeling low energy does not require reduced standards. Discomfort does not demand altered commitments. Most people negotiate with fatigue immediately. They lower expectations before testing capacity. They assume tired means incapable. That assumption is rarely accurate. Fatigue exaggerates difficulty. It distorts time perception. It amplifies resistance to effort. None of these effects justify stopping. You are not meant to feel powerful before acting. You are meant to act while power feels unavailable. Negotiation begins with a thought that sounds considerate. It suggests pacing yourself. It suggests recovery before progress. Sometimes recovery is necessary. Most of the time, it is a delay disguised as wisdom. Your mind uses fatigue as leverage because it works. Every time you negotiate, fatigue learns influence. You must separate sensation from instruction. Feeling tired is information. Stopping is a decision. You can acknowledge fatigue without obeying it. When tiredness appears, your task is not evaluation. Your task is execution at reduced emotional involvement. You do not need intensity. You need continuation. Low energy execution is still execution. Imperfect action still maintains authority. The goal is not to perform optimally. The goal is to refuse collapse. When you stop negotiating with fatigue, consistency stabilizes. You stop swinging between extremes of effort and avoidance. Fatigue loses its power when it no longer alters behavior. Your thoughts will protest this shift. They will claim you are being unreasonable. They will warn of burnout and failure. Those warnings are exaggerated projections. The real danger is inconsistency, not effort. You are more damaged by stopping than by pushing through. This does not mean reckless overexertion. It means disciplined continuation despite internal resistance. You choose a minimum standard and you hold it. No debate, no adjustment. Based on mood, that standard becomes your anchor. When fatigue arrives, you return to the standard, not to emotion, not to comfort. This teaches your mind a critical lesson. Fatigue does not control outcome. Over time, fatigue still appears, but its authority dissolves. You feel tired, yet you move anyway. That is not force. That is control. And control is how your life begins to change. Chapter 4. Direct attention with precision. Your attention is the steering mechanism of your life. Where it rests determines what grows stronger and what weakens silently. You lose control when attention drifts without direction. Most people believe distraction is accidental. It is not. Distraction is the natural state of an undisciplined mind. Your thoughts chase novelty, relief, and stimulation automatically. They move toward whatever feels easiest in the moment. If you do not intervene, attention will scatter endlessly. Scattered attention produces scattered results. You cannot change your life while allowing your focus to roam freely. Focus is not intensity. Focus is deliberate placement of attention despite internal resistance. Every time you allow your mind to wander from the task, you reinforce escape. Each small mental retreat trains avoidance at a deeper level. You tell yourself, it does not matter. It always matters. Attention is trained through repetition, not intention. You do not gain focus by wanting it. You gain focus by returning attention repeatedly under pressure. When you sit to work, your mind will look for exits. It will pull toward unrelated thoughts, memories, or concerns. This is not sabotage. This is habit. Your role is not to eliminate distraction. Your role is to redirect attention without emotion. No frustration, no commentary. Just return. Each return strengthens control. Each return shortens future distraction cycles. People who lack focus believe they need better concentration. They actually need better redirection discipline. You will notice resistance when you try to sustain attention. Your thoughts will say, this effort is excessive. They will claim you are forcing yourself unnecessarily. That resistance is evidence that training is working. Attention resists discipline because discipline limits freedom. Your mind values freedom more than progress. You must override that preference deliberately. When attention drifts, you bring it back immediately, not gently, not gradually, immediately. This sharp correction conditions authority. It teaches your mind that wandering has consequences. You do not punish yourself. You simply reassert direction. Over time, attention stabilizes, not because the mind becomes cooperative, because it learns compliance. Your life changes when your attention stops leaking into irrelevance. Effort compounds when focus stays contained. Control your attention, and your thoughts follow structure. Let attention drift, and your life follows chaos. Chapter 5. Break the comfort reflex. Your mind has been trained to seek comfort automatically. This training operates beneath awareness and influences every decision. When discomfort appears, your thoughts search for relief instantly. They frame avoidance as self-care. They justify retreat as balance. Comfort is not evil. Automatic comfort-seeking is destructive. Progress requires friction. Growth demands sustained exposure to discomfort. Your comfort reflex activates before conscious choice. That is why you must recognize it early. It shows up as distraction, delay, and rationalization. It whispers that you deserve a break. It insists that this effort can wait. The comfort reflex does not consider long-term consequence. It only reacts to immediate sensation. If you obey it consistently, your life shrinks quietly. Breaking this reflex requires deliberate opposition. You do not eliminate comfort. You delay it. You finish what you start before seeking relief. You complete the task before checking how you feel. This reverses authority internally. Your thoughts will resist this shift aggressively. They are accustomed to controlling timing. They will argue that you are being harsh. You are not being harsh. You are being precise. Discipline is precision applied under discomfort. When you override the comfort reflex, discomfort loses threat value. It becomes a signal, not a stop sign. You stop reacting emotionally to difficulty. You move forward without internal debate. This is how control strengthens. Each time you choose effort over relief, the reflex weakens. Each time you surrender, it grows bolder. There is no neutral response. Your daily behavior either reinforces comfort dominance or discipline authority. You do not wait until comfort loosens its grip. You act while it resists. That resistance is the training ground. Eventually, discomfort feels familiar instead of alarming. You no longer interpret it as danger. At that point, progress accelerates without struggle. Not because effort disappears, because control replaces hesitation. Chapter 6. Separate identity from thought. You believe your thoughts because you believe they are you. That belief gives them authority they do not deserve. A thought is an event, not an identity. It appears, speaks, and dissolves if unsupported. You give it permanence by attaching yourself to it. When a thought says you are weak, you accept the label. When it says you are unfocused, you adopt the description. When it says you are failing, you internalize the verdict. This fusion is where control is lost. You are not your thoughts. You are the one deciding whether they influence action. Most people never make this separation. They live inside every thought as if it were fact. They react emotionally because they feel personally attacked. A disciplined mind observes without merging. When a thought says you are tired, you do not argue. You acknowledge the statement and continue acting. You treat it as commentary, not instruction. Separation creates space. Space creates choice. Without separation, thoughts dictate behavior automatically. With separation, thoughts lose their urgency. You do not need to eliminate negative thoughts. You need to remove their authority over decisions. Thoughts will still say you are behind. They will still suggest you are not enough. They will still predict failure. None of that matters if action continues unaffected. Identity must be grounded in standards, not internal dialogue. Standards do not fluctuate based on mood or fatigue. They remain fixed even when thoughts resist. When you define yourself by standards, thoughts lose leverage. They can speak, but they cannot steer. This separation feels uncomfortable at first. You will feel detached from familiar internal narratives. That discomfort signals independence forming. Your mind will try to pull you back into identification. It will insist that ignoring thoughts is dangerous. It is not ignoring. It is choosing not to obey. You remain aware without submission. This is a critical shift. Once identity separates from thought, behavior stabilizes. You stop collapsing internally every time resistance appears. Your life begins to change when thoughts stop defining who you are. Chapter 7. Execute without emotional alignment. You have been waiting to feel ready before acting. That waiting has cost you years. Readiness is emotional alignment. Emotional alignment is unreliable. If action depended on feeling prepared, nothing meaningful would last. Consistency requires execution without emotional agreement. You do not need confidence to act. You need commitment to standards. Emotion fluctuates hourly. Standards remain constant when enforced deliberately. When you wait to feel motivated, you surrender timing. When you act regardless, you regain control. Your thoughts will object loudly to this principle. They will say, action without alignment is unsustainable. They are wrong. Action creates alignment, not the other way around. You move first. Emotion follows or dissolves. This reverses the dependency that has kept you stuck. Most people move only when emotion permits. Disciplined individuals move because standards require it. This is not forcing yourself violently. This is refusing emotional veto power. You act with neutrality. No hype, no drama, just execution. When emotions resist, you do not negotiate. You acknowledge resistance and continue anyway. This teaches your mind that feelings do not control behavior. Over time, emotional resistance weakens, not because you suppress it, because it no longer works. Your mind learns through consequence. When emotions fail to alter action, they lose influence. This is how consistency becomes effortless. Not because effort disappears, because emotional debate ends. You stop asking if you feel like it. You start acting because the moment demands action. This is how control feels internally. Quiet, firm, non-negotiable. Your life changes when action stops waiting for permission. Chapter 8. Build mental resistance tolerance. Resistance is not a signal to stop. Resistance is proof that change is being demanded internally. Every time you attempt to act beyond habit, resistance appears. It shows up as mental friction, hesitation, and emotional discomfort. Most people interpret this as a warning. It is not a warning. It is a threshold. Mental resistance exists to preserve familiarity. Your mind prefers known patterns, even harmful ones. When you challenge those patterns, resistance escalates automatically. You have been trained to retreat when resistance intensifies. That training has kept your life static. You must learn to tolerate resistance without reacting. Tolerance does not mean suppressing discomfort. It means allowing discomfort to exist without altering behavior. At first, resistance feels overwhelming because it is unfamiliar. You are not used to remaining steady while it presses against you. Most people try to eliminate resistance before acting. That never works. Resistance fades only after repeated exposure without retreat. This is the same principle that governs physical endurance. Mental endurance strengthens only when it is stressed consistently. You do not build tolerance by avoiding discomfort. You build tolerance by staying present while discomfort fails to control you. When resistance appears, you do not label it as a problem. You label it as training. Your thoughts will say you are pushing too hard. They will claim this pressure is unnecessary. They will predict burnout and collapse. These predictions are exaggerated and self-protective. Burnout does not come from effort. Burnout comes from internal conflict and inconsistency. When you stop fighting resistance emotionally, effort stabilizes. You stop wasting energy on internal debate. Resistance becomes background noise instead of a barrier. Each time you hold steady while resistance peaks, authority shifts. Your mind learns that discomfort no longer dictates outcome. This tolerance is cumulative. Each exposure strengthens the next. Eventually, resistance still appears, but it no longer alarms you. You recognize it as part of execution. At that point, your capacity expands rapidly, not because resistance disappears, because it stops mattering. This is how mental strength is built, not through confidence, but through repetition under pressure. Chapter 9. Eliminate internal excuses. Excuses are thoughts designed to preserve comfort and avoid strain. They sound logical because they borrow the language of reason. An excuse is not a lie. It is a selective truth used to justify avoidance. You do not lack discipline because you lack willpower. You lack discipline because you tolerate internal excuses. Excuses form quickly when effort becomes uncomfortable. They explain why delay is reasonable. They justify why standards should temporarily adjust. Temporary adjustments become permanent habits. You tell yourself you will compensate later. Later rarely arrives. Internal excuses survive because they are not challenged. They are accepted quietly and acted upon immediately. You must expose excuses the moment they appear. Exposure removes their power. When an excuse forms, you do not debate its validity. You identify its function. Its function is avoidance. That recognition is enough. You do not need to replace the excuse with motivation. You proceed with action while the excuse protests. This teaches your mind that explanations no longer change outcome. Excuses lose strength when they stop influencing behavior. Most people try to reason themselves out of excuses. That only strengthens them. Reasoning extends the conversation. Action ends it. You cannot think your way past avoidance. You must act past it. Each time you act despite an excuse, you weaken its future presence. Each time you comply, you reinforce its authority. There is no neutral response. Your internal environment reflects what you tolerate repeatedly. When excuses stop working, clarity increases. Decisions become simpler. Execution becomes faster. You stop living in justification mode. This does not make life easier. It makes it cleaner. Clean decisions reduce mental noise. Reduced noise strengthens focus. This is how momentum forms internally, not through inspiration, through elimination of unnecessary negotiation. Your life changes when excuses stop receiving attention. Chapter 10. Command the moment. The moment is where control is either exercised or surrendered. You do not lose your life all at once. You lose it moment by moment through indecision. Most people let the moment dictate their response. They react to mood, pressure, or distraction without pause. Reaction feels natural because it avoids responsibility. Command requires intention. To command the moment, you must decide before it arrives. You do not improvise standards under pressure. You install them in advance and execute automatically. When the moment arrives, thinking must be minimal. Decision-making is already complete. Action proceeds without internal discussion. This is how disciplined people operate consistently. Your thoughts will attempt to reopen decisions in the moment. They will suggest adjustments, delays, or exceptions. These suggestions are designed to regain control. You must refuse renegotiation. The moment does not ask how you feel. It demands response. When pressure appears, you narrow your attention. You identify the next correct action. You execute it immediately. No analysis, no emotion. Command is simple and direct. You do not try to control the entire day. You control the next action precisely. Precision eliminates overwhelm. Overwhelm thrives on vagueness. When your thoughts expand problems, you compress action. Small, exact execution restores authority. Each commanded moment builds momentum. Each surrendered moment builds hesitation. You are training your mind to respond decisively. That training compounds quickly. The moment is always available for command. You never need perfect conditions. You only need refusal to hesitate. When you command the moment repeatedly, your life reorganizes. Chaos loses its grip. Clarity emerges through action. This is not about dominance over others. This is dominance over internal drift. Command the moment and control follows naturally. Chapter 11. Reduce thought noise. Your mind is loud because it has never been filtered. Thoughts overlap, repeat, and compete for attention constantly. Noise increases when direction is absent. Most people try to quiet their minds by thinking more. That only adds layers of interference. Noise reduces when action clarifies priority. Thought noise is excess commentary without purpose. It does not solve problems. It delays movement. You reduce noise by limiting engagement. Not every thought deserves attention. Not every concern requires immediate processing. You must learn to let thoughts pass without interaction. Engagement amplifies noise. Detachment reduces it. When a thought appears, you ask one question internally. Does this affect my next action right now? If it does not, you let it go. You do not store it. You do not resolve it. You do not entertain it. This is not avoidance. This is prioritization. Noise thrives when everything feels equally urgent. Clarity returns when only action matters. Your mind will resist this simplicity. It prefers complexity because complexity delays commitment. You must enforce simplicity deliberately. Focus on execution. Let unresolved thoughts remain unresolved. Most problems do not require immediate solutions. They require sustained effort elsewhere. As action increases, thought noise decreases naturally. Movement organizes the mind. Stillness without discipline amplifies noise. When you reduce engagement, thoughts shorten. They lose emotional charge. They dissolve faster. This creates internal quiet without force. Quiet is not emptiness. Quiet is alignment. A quiet mind is not passive. It is decisive. Your life changes when your mind stops arguing with every step. Chapter 12. Build internal order. Your life feels unstable because your inner world lacks structure. Disorder inside always produces disorder outside. Internal order is not calmness. It is hierarchy. When everything in your mind feels equally important, nothing moves forward. Urgency spreads thin, and effort becomes inconsistent. You must establish order inside your thinking. Order begins with clear priorities, enforced through behavior, not preferences, not intentions. Priorities only exist when acted upon repeatedly. Your thoughts will attempt to elevate distractions. They will assign importance based on emotion rather than necessity. This creates internal conflict. Conflict drains energy faster than effort. To build internal order, you must decide what matters most. Then you must act on it regardless of competing thoughts. You do not try to satisfy every concern. You choose one direction and commit temporarily. Temporary commitment reduces mental chaos. When your thoughts pull in multiple directions, you refuse expansion. You narrow focus deliberately. You compress your field of attention. One task, one action. This simplicity creates stability. Your mind will resist constraint. It prefers flexibility because flexibility allows escape. Order requires limitation. You limit what receives attention. You limit what receives emotional energy. This does not mean ignoring responsibility. It means sequencing responsibility deliberately. Internal order grows through consistency. When your mind learns what comes first, it relaxes. Uncertainty is what creates noise. Clear structure reduces anxiety without reassurance. You do not need to feel organized to be organized. You act according to structure, and the feeling follows. This is how control deepens. Your thoughts align when behavior enforces order. Your life aligns when thoughts stop competing for dominance. Internal order is not comfort. It is clarity, earned through discipline. Chapter 13. Act before thought escalates. Thoughts grow stronger when given time. A small hesitation becomes a full argument if left unattended. Escalation is the enemy of action. When a thought first appears suggesting delay, it is weak. It becomes powerful only if you engage with it. Most people wait too long to act. They allow thoughts to gather momentum. By the time they decide, resistance feels overwhelming. You must act before escalation occurs. This requires speed, not urgency. Speed prevents argument. When a task is identified, you move immediately. No pause, no evaluation. Immediate action cuts off mental buildup. Your mind will protest this decisiveness. It will claim recklessness. This is not recklessness. This is containment. You are containing thought before it expands beyond usefulness. Once action begins, thoughts reorganize automatically. Resistance weakens when movement is established. Delay allows doubt to mature. Action keeps doubt immature. You do not wait for certainty. Certainty is created through motion. This is a discipline of timing. You train yourself to move at the first signal. This becomes automatic over time. Hesitation shortens. Execution accelerates. Your mind adapts to this rhythm. It learns that action is inevitable. When action becomes inevitable, thoughts stop resisting aggressively. This is how you regain momentum, not by overpowering thoughts, by outrunning their escalation. Your life begins to move when hesitation loses time to grow. Chapter 14. Control. Thought direction. Your thoughts do not need to be eliminated. They need direction. An undirected mind defaults toward comfort, distraction, and self-protection. Direction must be imposed deliberately. Thought direction is not positivity. It is alignment with purpose under resistance. When your thoughts drift toward doubt, you redirect. When they drift toward escape, you interrupt. When they drift toward complaint, you replace direction with action. You do not wait for thoughts to settle naturally. You steer them. Steering does not require forceful thinking. It requires selective engagement. You decide which thoughts receive attention and which are ignored. Attention feeds direction. If a thought does not support execution, it receives no time. Your mind will attempt to revisit old narratives. It will replay failures and imagined consequences. These loops feel important because they are familiar. Familiarity does not equal relevance. You must break loops by changing focus immediately. Focus is directional pressure. When you apply it consistently, your thoughts fall into line. Most people allow their minds to roam and hope outcomes improve. Outcomes follow direction, not hope. You direct thoughts by directing behavior. Action anchors thinking. When you act decisively, thoughts reorganize around movement. When you hesitate, thoughts scatter. This is not coincidence. Your mind prefers structure created by action. You are not trying to control every thought. You are controlling the dominant direction. Dominant direction determines behavior. When direction is clear, internal conflict decreases. Your mind stops arguing because it recognizes authority. This is how clarity emerges without reflection. Your life changes when your thoughts stop pulling against your actions. Chapter 15. Stay functional under pressure. Pressure reveals who controls your behavior. When pressure rises, undisciplined thoughts surface immediately. Most people collapse internally before they collapse externally. They lose clarity, posture, and restraint under stress. Functionality under pressure is not talent. It is training. You must train yourself to operate while uncomfortable. Pressure increases thought noise. It amplifies fear, doubt, and urgency. Your task is not to eliminate these reactions. Your task is to remain functional despite them. Functionality means continued execution of the next correct action. You simplify under pressure. You reduce options. You narrow focus. Complexity is a luxury you cannot afford under strain. When pressure appears, your thoughts will demand relief. They will push toward avoidance or emotional release. You do not comply. You slow your actions, not your standards. Slowness under pressure preserves control. Speed driven by panic destroys it. You act deliberately. You speak less internally. You move with restraint. This is how pressure is absorbed rather than resisted. Resisting pressure emotionally exhausts you. Absorbing pressure through structure sustains you. Each time you remain functional under strain, confidence becomes irrelevant. You no longer rely on belief. You rely on behavior. This is real stability. Your mind learns that pressure does not break execution. Over time, pressure loses its threat. This is how resilience is built, not through comfort, through exposure without collapse. Your life improves when pressure stops derailing your thinking. Chapter 16. Detach from outcome. Your thoughts lose control when they obsess over outcome. They project results before effort is complete. They measure progress prematurely and distort perception. Outcome fixation weakens execution. When your mind clings to results, it pressures action unnaturally. It creates urgency where patience is required. It creates fear where neutrality is necessary. You are not responsible for outcomes in the moment. You are responsible for execution. Outcome is delayed feedback. Execution is immediate responsibility. Most people fail internally because they try to feel successful too early. They need reassurance before effort has accumulated. That need sabotages consistency. Detachment does not mean indifference. It means discipline over attention. You do not deny goals. You temporarily remove them from focus. Your thoughts will try to calculate progress constantly. They will ask if this is working. They will demand signs of validation. You do not answer. You return attention to the task. This protects your energy. When you detach from outcome, pressure decreases naturally. Execution becomes steadier. Steady execution produces results without emotional turbulence. You do not rush effort to feel relief. You allow effort to accumulate quietly. This changes your relationship with time. You stop needing immediate reward. Delayed reward becomes tolerable when outcome is not monitored obsessively. Your mind resists this because outcome fixation creates drama. Drama creates stimulation. Discipline prefers quiet. When you detach from outcome, your thoughts stop spiking emotionally. They flatten. They become manageable. This is not passivity. This is restraint. Your life changes when effort becomes independent of expectation. Chapter 17. Replace reaction with response. Reaction is automatic. Response is chosen. Your thoughts push you toward reaction because it is faster. Reaction relieves pressure briefly. Response builds control permanently. When something goes wrong, your thoughts surge immediately. They assign blame, urgency, and emotion. Most people follow that surge instinctively. You must interrupt it. Response requires a pause, not hesitation. Control. In that pause, you decide what matters. Reaction speaks loudly and quickly. Response is quieter and deliberate. You train response by slowing the first movement, not the decision. The movement. When pressure hits, you lower your physical speed slightly. This signals control to your mind. Thoughts begin to settle when movement becomes measured. You do not react verbally internally. You do not narrate frustration. Narration intensifies reaction. You respond by identifying the next correct action only. No evaluation of fairness. No emotional commentary. Just action. This replacement weakens impulsive thinking. Your mind learns that emotional spikes do not produce change. Over time, reaction diminishes automatically. Response becomes default. This is not emotional suppression. This is emotional containment. Contained emotion does not interfere with execution. Your life stabilizes when reaction stops driving behavior. Stability creates reliability. Reliability creates progress. This is how internal maturity forms. Chapter 18. Train thought endurance. Your thoughts weaken when pressure lasts longer than expected. They were trained for short effort, not sustained demand. Thought endurance is the ability to remain mentally stable over time. Without it, consistency collapses even when discipline starts strong. Most people can push briefly. Few can remain steady. Your mind becomes unstable when effort extends beyond comfort. It begins searching for exits. It magnifies fatigue and exaggerates difficulty. This is not failure. It is untrained endurance. Thought endurance is built the same way physical endurance is built, through exposure without escape. You do not shorten effort to accommodate discomfort. You maintain duration while lowering emotional involvement. Emotion drains endurance. Neutrality preserves it. When effort feels long, your thoughts will complain about time. They will count minutes and anticipate relief. This anticipation exhausts you prematurely. You must stop monitoring time emotionally. Time is not the enemy. Inconsistency is. You endure by staying present in the current action, not the remaining workload, not the imagined finish. Present focus stabilizes thought. When thoughts escalate during long effort, you do not respond. You continue moving at the same pace. Pace matters more than intensity. A controlled pace allows endurance to form. Erratic intensity collapses quickly. Your mind adapts to sustained demand when it learns escape is unavailable. Adaptation reduces resistance automatically. This is how long-term consistency becomes possible. You are not meant to feel strong throughout effort. You are meant to remain functional. Endurance is functionality maintained over time. Your life changes when your thoughts stop weakening halfway through effort. Chapter 19. Remain consistent without motivation. Motivation is unreliable and unnecessary. Waiting for it has stalled your life repeatedly. Consistency cannot depend on emotional availability. Emotion fluctuates too frequently. Most people confuse motivation with readiness. They believe lack of motivation means lack of capacity. That belief is false. You can act without desire. You can move without enthusiasm. Consistency is behavior detached from mood. Your thoughts will insist that motivation is required. They will claim effort without motivation is unsustainable. That claim protects avoidance. Sustainability comes from structure, not emotion. You build consistency by repeating actions regardless of internal state. Repetition creates rhythm. Rhythm reduces friction. Once rhythm is established, motivation becomes irrelevant. You do not ask how you feel before acting. You ask what the standard requires. Standards remove negotiation. When motivation disappears, structure remains. When structure remains, progress continues. Your mind will test this repeatedly. It will withdraw emotional reward to regain influence. You must continue anyway. Eventually, the mind adapts. It stops withholding motivation because it no longer works. Motivation returns later as a byproduct. It never leads. This is how disciplined lives are built quietly. No emotional drama, no waiting, just repetition under resistance. Your life changes when consistency stops depending on desire. Chapter 20. stabilize internal discipline. Discipline collapses when it relies on constant effort. Stability comes when discipline becomes automatic. Internal discipline stabilizes when behavior stops fluctuating with thought. Right now, your discipline rises and falls because your thoughts still interfere. You must remove variability. Variable behavior trains inconsistency. Consistent behavior trains reliability. You stabilize discipline by enforcing the same response regardless of mental state. This removes emotional negotiation entirely. Your thoughts will attempt to introduce exceptions. They will argue context, fairness, and circumstance. You do not comply. Exceptions weaken systems. A stable internal structure does not debate daily. It executes predictably. You reduce decision points intentionally. Fewer decisions mean fewer opportunities for thought interference. When behavior becomes routine, thoughts lose leverage. Routine is not boredom. Routine is insulation against weakness. Your mind resists routine because routine removes control. That resistance confirms its effectiveness. You stabilize discipline by anchoring action to time and condition, not feeling. When the condition appears, action follows automatically. No thought required. This automation conserves mental energy. It prevents fatigue-based collapse. You are not trying to become rigid. You are becoming reliable. Reliability changes outcomes faster than intensity ever will. When discipline stabilizes internally, progress continues quietly. You stop needing reminders, pressure, or emotion. Your life changes when discipline becomes a default state. Chapter 21. Stop escaping into thought. Thinking has become your preferred form of escape. When effort intensifies, you retreat inward. You analyze, plan, reconsider, and reflect endlessly. This feels productive, but it is avoidance. Thought is safe because it requires no exposure. Action demands risk. Your mind has learned that thinking delays discomfort effectively. You must stop using thought as shelter. Reflection has a place. Escape disguised as reflection does not. You know the difference instinctively. When thinking increases as action decreases, escape is occurring. You interrupt this pattern immediately. When you catch yourself thinking excessively, you move physically. Movement breaks internal withdrawal. You do not wait for clarity. You create clarity through motion. Thought clarity follows action, not contemplation. Your mind will resist this aggressively. It will claim that planning is necessary. Planning beyond the next action is rarely necessary. Execution exposes what thinking cannot resolve. When you stop escaping into thought, reality sharpens. Problems become tangible and solvable. You stop hiding from friction. This builds courage without emotional buildup. Courage is exposure repeated, not confidence imagined. Your life changes when thought stops being a hiding place. Chapter 22. Maintain control when alone. You lose the most ground when no one is watching. Alone time exposes the truth about your internal discipline. Without external pressure, your thoughts speak freely. They test boundaries and suggest relaxation of standards. This is where most lives stall. You behave differently when observed because accountability is present. When alone, accountability must come from structure, not feeling. Your thoughts will say effort is unnecessary without witnesses. They will argue that rest is deserved. This argument is seductive because it feels private. Private decisions shape public outcomes. You do not become disciplined in public. You become disciplined alone. Alone, you must enforce the same standards. No reduction, no exception. Consistency does not change with environment. When alone, your mind will push hardest for escape. It believes it can regain control quietly. You must deny it that opportunity. You do not rely on willpower. You rely on predetermined rules. Rules remove choice. Choice invites negotiation. When the condition appears, action follows automatically. This eliminates internal debate. You treat alone time as a test of integrity. Integrity is alignment between standard and behavior. Every private victory strengthens authority. Every private concession weakens it. There is no neutral outcome. When you maintain control alone, confidence becomes unnecessary. You trust behavior, not mood. This trust stabilizes your life. You stop needing supervision. You become self-governed. That is real freedom. Chapter 23. Enforce mental standards. Standards mean nothing unless enforced consistently. Mental standards are rules governing thought behavior. Without enforcement, thoughts drift back to old patterns. You must decide what thinking is acceptable. Acceptable thoughts support execution, focus, and restraint. Unacceptable thoughts justify avoidance, indulgence, or delay. You do not argue with unacceptable thoughts. You remove their influence. Removal happens through non-engagement and immediate action. Your mind will test these standards repeatedly. It will attempt subtle violations. Subtle violations lead to collapse over time. You must respond immediately. When a thought violates a standard, you redirect focus instantly. No explanation, no justification. Standards are not debated. They are applied. This creates internal consistency. Consistency reduces internal conflict. Conflict drains energy. When mental standards are enforced, thinking becomes cleaner. Thoughts shorten and simplify. Your internal environment becomes predictable. Predictability allows momentum. You stop being surprised by your own behavior. This reliability changes how you approach life. You plan knowing execution will follow. That confidence is earned, not imagined. Your life changes when standards stop being optional internally. Chapter 24. Become internally unshakable. Being unshakable does not mean you feel strong. It means your behavior no longer collapses when pressure appears. Most people are stable only when conditions are favorable. That is not stability. That is dependence. Internal strength is revealed when thoughts attempt to destabilize you. They will question your effort. They will magnify discomfort. They will predict failure. You do not remove these thoughts. You outlast them. Unshakability is built through repeated exposure without retreat. Each time your thoughts push and you do not yield, something changes. Authority shifts inward. Your mind learns that instability no longer produces escape. You stop reacting emotionally to internal turbulence. You remain grounded while thoughts fluctuate. This is not emotional numbness. This is emotional independence. You no longer need reassurance to continue. You no longer require confidence to proceed. Your actions are not contingent on internal harmony. Harmony follows obedience, not discussion. When your thoughts attack your resolve, you stay present. You do not dramatize resistance. You do not personalize discomfort. You continue. Continuing under pressure builds certainty faster than success ever could. Certainty comes from knowing you will act regardless of how you feel. That certainty stabilizes your life. You stop fearing bad days because bad days no longer derail execution. You stop fearing doubt because doubt no longer controls timing. This is internal independence. An unshakable mind does not need perfect conditions. It creates forward motion under imperfect ones. This is where life changes permanently. Chapter 25. Final command. Your thoughts will never stop testing you. They will always look for moments of weakness. That is not a flaw. That is the mind's nature. Your responsibility is not to eliminate this resistance. Your responsibility is to remain in control regardless. From this point forward, you do not wait for alignment. You move first. You do not ask permission from fatigue. You do not negotiate with doubt. You decide. Then you act. Your thoughts may object. They may complain. They may threaten discomfort. They do not decide. You have trained enough to understand this truth. Thoughts are information. Action is authority. Every time you act despite resistance, control strengthens. Every time you hesitate, control weakens. There is no neutral ground. You do not need to feel ready. You do not need clarity. You do not need motivation. You need obedience to your own standards. From now on, when resistance appears, you recognize it immediately. You do not explain it. You do not analyze it. You move. You return to execution. You stay functional. You remain grounded. This is not temporary effort. This is how you live now. Your life will change because your thoughts no longer run unchecked. Your behavior will stabilize because excuses no longer delay action. You are not waiting anymore. Act now. Maintain control. Do not stop.